The distance formula is used to find the distance between 2 points. So if you have some point right here and some point over here, we can find the distance between those 2 points by using the distance formula. Alright, and what it actually is, if you think about it, if you look at it long enough, you can figure out all it is the Pythagorean theorem. That's all it is, just solved for the slanted side of a triangle. You can't really see it with this right here, but let me write a better example up here. Like, say you wanted to find the distance between these 2 points. That would be that distance. What we're actually doing is thinking about it like this. And so if we find the distance from this point over to the left, or look at the run and find that number, you know, say I'm just going to call that A, that side A, and then you look at the rise, that distance, and call that side B. Then do you remember the Pythagorean theorem? One of the most famous theorems of all time says if you have a triangle and this is side C, how do you find side C? You say A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You know, this isn't in your book. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of extra on this for it to make a little more sense. So if I wanted to know what C was equal to, you take the square root of both sides, right? C is equal to the square root of A squared plus B squared. That's actually what the distance formula is. That's all we're doing. It's just that we have a lot of different variables. Okay? The distance formula that we use in here and that you have seen before, I'm sure, is that D, distance, is equal to the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Do you see how that's similar to the Pythagorean theorem? Because what is x sub 2 minus x sub 1? It's the length of this side of the triangle I have drawn. What's y sub 2 minus y sub 1? It's the length, or this side, the height of the triangle I have drawn. So it's the same thing. It's just we have different variables. We have points, so we plug those points in. Alright? So for any 2 points, if we plug those into the distance formula, that will give us the distance between those 2 points. Alright? So let's find the distance between these 2 given points. Let's say I have the point 5, 1 and the point 8, 5. And I want to find the distance between those 2. So that it will match up with this formula, label your points. X sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. Now you may not have to do that, but using these formulas to make sure you plug the right numbers in, you might want to. Alright, so the distance between these 2 points is equal to the square root of x sub 2, which is 8, minus x sub 1 is 5, squared, plus y sub 2 is 5, minus y sub 1 is 1 squared. Alright, so what is 8 minus 5? That's 3. So I have 3 squared plus 4 squared. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. Alright, so 9 plus 16, that would be the square root of 25. Square root of 25 is 5. So the distance between these 2 points is 5 units. Now, can these numbers under the radical, when you get to this last step here, can these numbers ever be negative? The number inside the parentheses can be negative, but what do we do to it? We square it. So when you get down here to one of the last steps, once you square it, if it's positive or if it's negative, it's going to become positive. So just know you should never have a negative under the radical there. Now, the main thing that students mess up on this is they forget to square. They forget to square this. Or another common mistake is just to write down the formula and not put the square root there and work it out. And so at the end they leave the answer as 25. But remember, we have to take the square root of all that. Okay? Alright, I'm going to do another. Let's say I wanted to find the distance between -2, -6, and 3, -4. Alright, so remember your distance formula. I'm going to label my points. And distance is equal to the square root of y sub 2, or let's do the x's first. X sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. So I have a lot of negatives in there. Anywhere you have minus a negative, make that plus. Alright, and so that's equal to the square root of 5 squared plus 2 squared. Alright, -4 plus 6 is 2, so 2 squared. So that's going to be the square root of 25 plus 4. Now, here's another mistake that students make, not just in algebra or in trig. I have students that make this same mistake in Calculus 1. If you do have a sum of 2 numbers under a radical, you can't take the square root of the 2 numbers separately. Like I can't say this is not equal to the square root of 25 plus the square root of 4. So always keep that in mind. If you're ever dealing with radicals, you can't split the radical up. Not if you're adding or subtracting. So that's just equal to the square root of 29. Alright. Now I want you to try one on your own. So find the distance between these 2 points. -4, -1, and 2, -3. Take a minute and work that. So I'm going to label my points. Distance is equal to the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. So anywhere I have minus and negative, I'm going to put plus. Not there, but there. Alright, so that's going to be 6 squared plus -2 squared. the square root of 36 plus 4, that's the square root of 40. I don't want to leave my final answer like that because that will reduce. That's the square root of 4 times the square root of 10, because 4 times 10 is 40, and the square root of 4 is 2. So that's 2 square roots of 10. Alright, so that answer was 2 square roots of 10 after you simplify. The next formula we're going to go over is called the midpoint formula. And the midpoint formula gives you the point that's in the middle between 2 points. So if I had a point here and a point here, if I knew exactly where the middle was between these 2 points, let's just pretend that it's right here, that's the middle, then you would get that point that is right between those 2 points. And this is one of the easier formulas because it's kind of like just taking the average. If you want to know the average and you've taken 2 tests, you add the 2 tests together and divide by 2. Well, that's basically what we're going to do. The midpoint formula is take the first x, add it to the second x, and divide by 2. Take the first y and the second y and divide by 2. And make an ordered pair out of that. So, for example, let's say I wanted to find the midpoint between the points 10, 4 and 2, 6. So, label your points. I'm going to say 10 plus 2, all divided by 2. Alright, because x sub 1 plus x sub 2, all divided by 2. And y sub 1 plus y sub 2, all divided by 2. Alright, so simplify the numerators. That's going to be 12 divided by 2 and 10 divided by 2. And we can simplify those fractions, right? That's going to give me 6, 5. So if we were to take and graph 10, 4 and graph 2, 6, and then take and graph our answer of 6, 5, that will be the middle point between those 2 points. So that's what the midpoint formula actually gives you, a point on the graph that is between 2 points. Exactly at the midway point. That's called the midpoint formula. Alright, let me do a few more. These examples go by pretty fast. Let's say I had -2, -1, and -8, 6. And I wanted to know what's the midpoint between these 2 points. Alright, I like to label my points. Add the 2 x's together, so -8 plus -2, all divided by 2. And add the 2 y's together. 6 plus -1. Now it doesn't matter if you put x sub 2 first or x sub 1, or y sub 2 first or y sub 1, because you're adding them together. Alright, and that's all divided by 2. Alright, so this first number here, that's going to be -10 over 2, which will reduce, and +5 over 2. So my midpoint is -5, 5/2. Usually we don't write a decimal. We just if the fraction cannot be reduced, we just leave it like that. So negative 5 5/2. All right, let me work a little more difficult example. And what makes this one difficult is I'm going to throw some fractions in here. Negative 2/5, 7/15 is 1 point, and the other point is negative 2/5, negative 4/15. Alright, so just because they're fractions don't mean we're going to do anything different. It's just that we may have to get a common denominator here or there. We may have to divide a fraction by a number. We'll do something like that. All right. So I'm going to use the same formulas though. The midpoint is equal to x sub 1 plus x sub 2 all divided by 2 and y sub 1 plus y sub 2 all divided by 2. Alright, so we have the same denominator here on this example. So negative 2/5 plus negative 2/5, that's negative 4/5 divided by 2. Same here, we have the same denominator, so that's going to be 3/15 divided by 2. And 3/15 will reduce, right? That'll reduce to 1/5. So actually we have 1/5 divided by 2. Now, how do we take a fraction and divide it by anything? There's a couple ways to think about it. The easiest way is to probably think about like this bottom number is a fraction, like it's over 1. Because if it's over 1, if these are over 1, then you flip and multiply. That's generally what we're taught. Flip and multiply. So we're going to multiply the numerator by 1/2. Both of these. Multiply the numerator by 1/2. So this numerator, or this now becomes negative 4/10 and 1/10. So I took the denominator, I flipped and multiplied. Took the denominator, I flipped and multiplied. So the x coordinate will reduce, won't it? So that's going to be what? Negative 2/5 and 1/10. That's your midpoint. Your point negative 2/5, 1/10. Alright. One more challenging midpoint, then we'll be done with midpoint. What if we had radicals in there in the point, like this? What if I wanted to find the midpoint between the 2 points 7 square roots of 3, negative 6, and 3 square roots of 3, negative 2? Alright, so let's label the points. X sub 1, y sub 1. X sub 2, y sub 2. Alright, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to add the two x's together. So 7 square roots of 3 plus 3 square roots of 3, all divided by 2. And then add the two y's together. Negative 6 plus negative 2, all divided by 2. So how do we add radicals? We just add the numbers in the front as long as the radical part's the same. So this is 10 square roots of 3 over 2. and negative 8 over 2. Now, if you can simplify between the denominator and what's in front of the radical, then you do that, and you can, right? So my final answer is going to be, my midpoint is 5 square roots of 3 and negative 4. It's a little tougher, but it's the same concept. Midpoint, finding the point between 2 points. The general form of the equation of a circle is a little confusing at times, because the general form really doesn't give you a lot of information that you can see and apply to a graph or write down the important parts of a circle. So usually what we put a circle in is called standard form. All right. The standard form of the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. This is the standard form of the equation of a circle. Now, from the standard form of the equation of a circle, if we're either given it in that form, or if we're given some of the good circle information that we need in order to graph a circle, if you have it in this form, this is the best. And in this form, notice there's a minus right here. There's a minus right here. You're adding these two things right here. And the right side of the equation is the radius squared. So from this formula, you can get two main things. Two main things that help you graph or help you to visualize a circle. The first thing you can get is the center of the circle. So the center of the circle is going to be a point, just right in the center of the circle. That is always equal to, from the standard form, that's equal to HK. So if you can get the point HK, that's the center. Notice that there's a minus in front here and here. So what you have to do to find the first coordinate, you take the opposite of whatever is here. So if this was a minus 2, your first coordinate would be a positive 2, because there's a minus in the formula. The second coordinate you get from this set of parentheses, and again there's a minus in front of it, so just take the opposite sign. So if this is a plus 4, then the k coordinate will be a minus 4. So you take the opposite sign to get those two coordinates. Then the radius of the circle, that's equal to just r. So you take the square root of the number on the right side, and that will give you the radius. So the center is HK, the radius is r. Alright, so let's write the equation of a circle if the center equals 2, 3, and the radius equals 4. Alright, and this is the form that we want to write it in. This right here. So our center, that's HK, and our radius, our R, is 4. So look at this formula here. So you say x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals, what's 4 squared? 16. Okay? So notice that we have a minus in front of the 2 and a minus in front of the 3. That's because the center is a positive 2, positive 3. And then the radius is 4. Whatever number out here, you need to square the radius to get that. Okay? Same directions. Let's let the center equal -3, 0. And let's let the radius equal the square root of 5. Okay. So there's H, there's K, and there's R. So x minus -3 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals square root of 5 squared. Remember, whatever the radius is, you have to square it to write it down like this. Alright, so I have x minus -3. That's going to be x plus 3 squared. Y minus 0. Y minus 0 is y. So that's just y squared equals the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5. Okay? So let's look at this answer and see if we didn't have this stuff up here, would we be able to get the answers? This is standard form. This is the best form for the equation of a circle. So the center of this circle is -3 because you take the opposite sign. So -3, 0, because there's no number by the y. And the radius is the square root of 5. So we should be able to go both ways. We should be able to take the center and radius and write it in standard form, or take an equation in standard form and figure out the center and the radius. Let's do that. Let's find the center and radius of the given circle. Alright, let's say that I had x minus 4 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 13. Alright, the center of the circle. is going to be the point. Remember, it's HK. So it's going to be positive 4, negative 2. Right? We take the opposite sign of the numbers. Positive 4, negative 2. That's the center of the circle. What's the radius? Square root of 13. All right. Not too bad. Now, one of the first things that I told you was that the general form of the equation of a circle is not very easy to read, or it doesn't give us all the information that we need. Let me show you why the standard form is so much better, and I'll show you a general form in just a second. But the standard form of the equation of a circle is so much better because we can use that standard form to help us graph the equation of a circle, or to graph a circle. So let's say that we wanted to graph this equation. X plus 1 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 4. The first thing we need to know is what is the center. That's going to be the point negative 1, positive 1. And what is the radius? That's going to be equal to the square root of 4, which is 2. So if we want to sketch one of these, or graph one of these, here's what we need to do. First, go to the center of the circle. So our center was at negative 1, 1. So negative 1, 1. Right here is the center of my circle. Now, to get some points on the outside of the circle, take the radius, and then from that center point, go, since the radius is 2, go 2 units to the right and put a point. Go back to the center. Go 2 units down and put a point. Go back to the center. Go 2 units to the left and put a point. Go back to the center. Go 2 units up and put a point. Go back to the center. So those 4 points we know will be on the outside of the circle. Then just draw a circle best you can. Alright, mine don't look that great, but that is the circle sketched. Put a point at the center and then go out ever how many units the radius is from the center, up, down, left, right, get those 4 points, and then draw a circle through those 4 points. Okay. So it's really easy to sketch a circle. You just need to make sure that you have the center and the radius correct. I'm also going to show you how to graph that on your homework, because there are a couple homework problems like that. Alright, so now that you know just how good the standard form is, let me show you the general form of the equation of a circle. The general form of the equation of a circle is x squared plus y squared plus some number, I'm just going to say d times x, plus some number times y, so I'm going to say e times y, plus some number equals 0. So, for example, let's say that I had x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 6y minus 23 equals 0. Now looking at this equation, what can you tell me? You really can't tell me anything. You might think, hey, I could just move this 23 over and maybe I could tell you the radius. That's not the radius. So the way that we go from the general form to the standard form is by using a method that we used when solving quadratic equations. At the time when we went over that method, I said this probably isn't the best way to do it, but it will work, and that was called completing the square. So here's what we want to do if we have the general form of the equation of a circle. We want to group the x terms together and put a plus blank. So I'm going to say x squared plus 4x plus blank. Then I'm going to write down the y terms and kind of group them together. So plus y squared minus 6y plus blank. Then I'm going to take the constant, the number without a variable, and I'm going to move it across the equal sign, move it to the right side of the equation. So if I move this negative 23 over, it'll be a positive 23. Since I have two blanks on the left side, I'm going to put plus blank on the right side. Alright, so I'm going to complete the square twice. Once with the x terms and once with the y terms. Alright, so first, remember what you put in the blank. You take half of what's in front of x and square it. So half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. If you add 4 to the left side of the equation, you have to add 4 to the right side of the equation. Alright, now we do the same thing for the y's. Half of what's in front of the y is 3. 3 squared is 9. So I'm adding 9 on the left side. I have to add 9 on the right side. Alright, now the left side, now this will factor on it. It's a perfect square. How does it factor? X plus plus. Why is it a plus plus? Because this right here is a plus, so you put a plus plus there. And then what did I have when I took half of what was in front of x? 2. So 2, 2. So that means this term is x plus 2 squared. That's the first term. Plus, now complete the square for this. Parentheses, parentheses, half of what's in front of y and square it. That's how we got that number. So how do I get, first, how do I get the plus or the minus? Look at the sign in front of the middle term. It's a what? Minus. So put minus, minus. Now how do I know what the number is? It's what I had when I took half of this. Half of 6 was 3. So 3, 3. So you can write that as y minus 3 squared. Now equals 23 plus 4 is 27. 27 plus 9 is 36. So now I have the standard form of the equation of a circle. You get that by completing the square with the x's, completing the square with the y's. And remember, what you add to one side of the equation, and yes, you always add, you have to do to the other side. So what is the center of this circle? That's going to be the point -2, +3. And what's the radius of this circle? The square root of 36, which is 6. So if you're just asked to put it in standard form, you can stop right there. But the best thing about standard form is you can figure out the center and the radius really fast. Now let's take a look at another example. Let's work one from the homework. Alright. Complete the square and write the equation of the circle in standard form. Then determine if the center and radius of the circle, or then determine the center and radius of the circle to graph the equation. Alright, so we're going to have to complete the square, write it in standard form, then figure out the center and radius and graph it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out the standard form. So we have the general form. So here's the general form of the equation of the circle. So group up the x terms and put a plus blank. Group up the y terms and put a plus blank. Then the number that we have, the constant, has no variable, move that over. So if it's a plus 25 on the left side, it's going to be a minus 25 on the right side. And we're going to put plus blank, plus blank. Okay. So half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So I add 25 and add 16. So I need to do the same thing to the right side. Add 25, add 16. So this now factors. Remember, it's a perfect square, so you really only have to write it down once and say squared. So remember, that's x plus, and then what did we get when we took half of 10? 5. Plus, that factors, it's a perfect square. Y plus half of 8 was 4 squared. Alright, now, negative 25 plus 25 is 0. Plus 16 is 16. So the center is equal to the point negative 5, negative 4, and the radius is equal to the square root of 16, which is 4. Alright, now let's take a look at the homework and see how we would enter that in. So we want to write, first it says write the equation in standard form. So x plus 5 squared, so x plus 5 squared plus x plus 4 squared, x plus 4 squared equals 16. Okay. The equation in standard form is, my format must be wrong. Let me double check all this real quick. Plus 25. Yeah, I put x twice. Thank you. That needs to be a y. Alright. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, fantastic. Alright. Use the graphing tool to graph the circle. So pay attention to this. I'm just going to make it a little bigger so we can see it. Alright, over here on the side, you see all these little tools, and down here you see a circle. the circle tool. So click the circle tool and go to the center. We said the center was -5, -4. So from the middle, go to -5 on the X, -4 on the Y. Alright, so that's -5, -4. Put a point. That's the center. Now what's the radius? The square root of 16 is 4. So we want to go out 4. So now just drag the cursor. You just move the cursor, and ever how many you move out, it will move out that many. So we just want to go out 4 since our radius is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the circle. So save. That's what it would look like. Check the answer. Alright, so choose the circle tool, put a point, drag it ever how many you need to get the radius. And you got your circle.